It's 2 p.m. on July 30th, 1975, a Wednesday afternoon cloaked in the stifling, oppressive heat of a Michigan summer. The parking lot of Amachu's Red Fox restaurant in Bloomfield Township, just outside Detroit, stretches like a concrete wasteland, its asphalt shimmering under a merciless sun, the neon sign above the steakhouse buzzing faintly, its red glow flickering like a premonition of doom. A lone figure stands near a weathered payphone booth, his navy polo shirt crisp against the haze, his white slacks pressed to perfection, his black loafers polished to a mirror shine. But his face is a storm of impatience, his piercing eyes scanning the horizon for a car that will never arrive. This is Jimmy Hoffa, Union Titan, king of the Teamsters, a man who could grind America's commerce to a halt with a single phone call, a firebrand who danced a deadly waltz with mob bosses, presidents, and the FBI's relentless, unblinking gaze. At 2:15 p.m., he steps into the booth, dials a friend, his voice sharp with frustration, cutting through the static. "Where the hell are they? I've been standing here for 15 minutes, and I'm not waiting much longer." He slams the receiver down, the sound echoing like a gunshot, paces the cracked asphalt, checks his gold watch again, unaware he's standing on the edge of a void, a precipice into oblivion. Then, in an instant, he's gone, swallowed by the Michigan haze, vanished without a trace, as if the earth itself opened to claim him. No body, no arrest, no answers. For nearly half a century, the disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa has gripped America, a mystery steeped in betrayal, power, and a chilling silence that feels alive, like a pulse throbbing in the dark. The men who know what happened, mob enforcers, union insiders, perhaps even government shadows, aren't talking. Their silence isn't just loyalty. It's a blood oath, a wall of omerta stronger than steel, unbroken even in 2025. 50 years later. Stay with us, because the secret of Jimmy Hoffa's fate isn't buried deep. It's protected, guarded by a code forged in blood, cemented by power, and preserved by a fear that lingers like a curse across decades. A fear that still whispers in the shadows of Detroit streets. What happened in that parking lot, and why, after half a century, is the truth still locked away, as untouchable as the man himself? Jimmy Hoffa wasn't just a man, he was a force of nature, a legend carved from the sweat, steel, and defiance of America's working class, a name that reverberated with raw, unyielding power from the loading docks of Detroit to the marble corridors of Washington, D.C. Born on February 14, 1913, in Brazil, Indiana, to a coal miner's family. Hoffa grew up in the shadow of poverty, his father dead by the time he was 7, his mother scrubbing floors to feed 4 children in a world that offered no mercy. He dropped out of school at 14, hauling crates in a Michigan warehouse, his fists as quick as his mind, learning early that power came from standing your ground, from staring down bosses and bullies alike. By his 20s, he was organizing strikes in Detroit's brutal labor scene, a scrappy brawler with a voice that could rally hundreds, a charisma that turned dockworkers into soldiers, and a glare that silenced doubters. By 1957, at 44, he was president of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, commanding 2.3 million truckers, drivers, and warehouse workers. A union so vast it could paralyze the nation's supply chains with a single strike, from New York's bustling ports to California's sprawling highways. "I may have faults," Hoffa growled in a 1960 CBS interview, his eyes blazing with defiance, his voice gravelly with conviction. "But being wrong ain't one of them." To his supporters, he was a working-class savior, a warrior who secured pensions, health benefits, and wages that lifted families into the middle class, giving truckers dignity in a world that saw them as cogs in a machine. To his enemies, he was a rogue, a tyrant who ruled with intimidation, bending the law to his will, thriving in the gray zones where power and corruption intertwined. Hoffa's real strength and his ultimate danger lay in his alliances, forged in the shadows of America's underworld. His ties to the Mafia were an open secret, whispered in union halls, captured in grainy FBI surveillance photos, and detailed in wiretaps that crackled with menace. He funneled Teamsters' pension funds, $300 million by 1964, per 1975 Senate report, into mob ventures from the neon-lit casinos of Las Vegas, like the Stardust and Caesar's Palace, to murky Florida land deals tied to Santo Trafficant's empire and shady construction projects bankrolled by the Genovese family. Mob bosses like Anthony Tony Provenzano of the Genovese crime family, Russell Bufalino of Pennsylvania's quiet but lethal syndicate, and Carlos Marcello in New Orleans called him brother. But in their world, brotherhood was a transaction, a ledger of favors and debts, not a bond of trust. Hoffa was their golden goose. A retired FBI agent told the Detroit Free Press in 1976. But he was too loud, too ambitious, too damn uncontrollable for his own good. His battles weren't just with the mob. Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy made Hoffa his personal crusade, branding him the most dangerous man in America in a 1961 Senate hearing, vowing to dismantle his empire with the McClellan Committee's relentless probes. Kennedy grilled Hoffa for hours, exposing mob ties, rigged contracts, and strong-arm tactics. But Hoffa, smirking, dodged every jab, his wit as sharp as a switchblade. In 1964, his luck ran out. Convicted of jury tampering and fraud, he was sentenced to 13 years in federal prison, a fall that shook the labor world like an earthquake, his empire crumbling under the weight of his own defiance. In 1971, President Richard Nixon pardoned him after just 4 years, a deal steeped in whispers of Teamsters, campaign cash, and mob favors, per a 1975 Senate report that called it a political bargain with far-reaching implications. Hoffa emerged unbowed, his eyes burning with the singular, obsessive goal, reclaim the Teamsters presidency from Frank Fitzsimmons, a mob-friendly puppet who'd handed the union's pension fund to the Mafia on a silver platter, letting capos skim millions for their empires. "I'm coming back," Hoffa told a roaring crowd in 1974, his fist raised, his voice a thunderclap that echoed across Detroit. "And nobody's stopping me. Not Fitzsimmons, not the mob, not the feds." But his comeback was a declaration of war against the mob, who feared his plans to expose their pension fund scams, against Fitzsimmons, who'd grown fat on power, against secrets buried in Vegas deals, Florida swamps, and political backrooms. By July 1975, at 62, Hoffa was a man with a target on his back. His enemies a rogues gallery of the most dangerous men in America. Union rivals, Mafia capos, FBI agents who'd tapped his phones for decades, even politicians nervous about what he knew. Deals that linked Nixon's White House to organized crime, campaign funds that flowed like blood. He was a giant, but giants cast long shadows, and Hoffa's was about to swallow him whole. Who wanted him silenced, and what secrets made his disappearance the only way to keep them buried forever. It's 2 p.m. on July 30th, 1975, a Wednesday cloaked in the sticky, oppressive heat of a Michigan summer, the air thick with the scent of gasoline and cut grass. The Machu's Red Fox restaurant in Bloomfield Township, just outside Detroit, sits like a fortress of discretion, its dark wood paneling and thick velvet curtains hiding deals sealed over rare steaks and bourbon in dimly lit booths, a place where secrets are currency. Jimmy Hoffa pulls into the sprawling parking lot in his green Pontiac Grandville, A car as bold as its owner, its chrome gleaming like a challenge under the unrelenting sun. He's dressed sharp, navy polo tucked neatly, white slacks pressed, black loafers polished, a gold watch glinting on his wrist. But his face betrays a flicker of unease, his piercing eyes scanning the lot for signs of his contacts, his jaw set tight. He's here for a high-stakes meeting, supposedly to mend fences, with Anthony Tony Pro Provenzano, a Genovese crime family capo and Teamster's rival, and Anthony Tony Jack Giacalone, a Detroit mob enforcer whose smile masked a killer's edge. The meeting is a truce, or so Hoffa believes. His bid to reclaim the Teamsters' presidency has stirred a hornet's nest, and Tony Pro, who once threatened to rip his guts out with my bare hands, per a 1975 FBI wiretap, isn't known for forgiveness. His grudges as cold as a grave. At 2:15 p.m., Hoffa steps into a weathered payphone booth across the lot, its glass smudged, its metal frame rusted, and dials Louis Linteau, a Teamster's ally who ran his Detroit office. "I'm waiting, and they're not here," he snaps, his voice tight with irritation, cutting through the hum of traffic, according to Linteau's 1975 police statement. "I've been here 15 minutes, and if they don't show by 2:30, I'm gone." He slams the receiver down, the sound echoing like a warning shot, paces the cracked asphalt, checks his watch again, his impatience swelling like a storm, his shadow sharp against the pavement. Witnesses later tell police they saw him near a maroon Mercury Marquis, talking to two men in suits, one tall, one stocky, both hard-looking, like they meant business. Per a 1975 FBI memo, a truck driver unloading nearby spots a tall guy in a dark jacket lurking by a chain-link fence, his face half hidden under a cap, his posture tense. Per a 1976 Detroit News report, a Machu's Red Fox waitress, interviewed in 1975, recalls Hoffa looking nervous, like he sensed trouble, kept glancing over his shoulder, his hands restless. Her statement buried in a BPD file until 2005. Then, silence falls like a curtain. By 4 p.m., his wife, Josephine, calls Linteau, her voice trembling with panic. Jimmy's not home. He's never late like this, never. By nightfall, the family alerts police. The calls frantic, their fear palpable. The man who could summon 1,000 trucks with a nod, who stared down mobsters, senators, and the Kennedys, is gone, swallowed by the summer haze, leaving only a car, a phone booth, and a trail that vanishes into nothing, as if he'd never existed. The Machu's Red Fox becomes a crime scene, but it's a ghost town of evidence, maddeningly empty. No blood, no fingerprints, no bullet casings, no signs of a struggle. A 1975 police report notes a faint tire mark near the payphone, curving toward the lot's exit, but it leads nowhere, dissolving into the asphalt. Hoffa's Pontiac sits untouched, its keys missing, its doors locked, its interior eerily pristine, as if waiting for its owner to return. Witnesses contradict each other. One swears the Mercury sped off, tires squealing into the dusk. Another says it lingered, its tinted windows black as night, unmoving until the lot emptied. A police sketch of the tall man circulates, but it's too vague. A phantom in a sea of faces, his features blurred by memory and fear. Hoffa's last call, his restless pacing, the mysterious car. Every detail feels like a breadcrumb on a path deliberately swept clean, a puzzle designed to defy solving. A story rewritten before it could be told. Who was he really meeting that day? And why did they ensure he'd never leave that parking lot alive? When Jimmy Hoffa vanished, the FBI didn't just mobilize. They unleashed a tidal wave, a force of nature as relentless as the man they sought. Within hours of Josephine Hoffa's desperate call, agents swarmed the Machu's Red Fox, cordoning off the parking lot. their flashlights cutting through the Michigan dusk. They launched Hoffa's, a sprawling investigation that became one of the Bureau's largest, spanning decades, 16,000 interviews, thousands of search warrants, and millions of dollars. A manhunt that stretched from Detroit's gritty streets to the swamps of New Jersey. Yet it ended in a void, no body, no charges, no closure, just a gaping wound in America's criminal history that festers still. By August 1975, the FBI had a short list of suspects, all steeped in the Mafia's shadow, all untouchable. Anthony "Tony" Provenzano, a New Jersey mobster and Teamsters official, topped the list. His feud with Hoffa personal and vicious. Hoffa had threatened to expose Tony Pro's pension fund scams, per a 1975 FBI wiretap, where he raged, "If Jimmy talks to the feds, we're all in the can, every last one of us." Provenzano's alibi, playing cards in Union City, New Jersey, 600 miles away, was backed by mob associates, airtight but reeking of rehearsal, per a 1975 BPD report. Anthony "Tony" Giacalone, Detroit's mob enforcer, was next, a man whose charm hid a killer's instincts. He claimed he was at a gym 20 miles away, sweating for a workout, a story propped up by equally dubious witnesses, per a 1976 FBI memo. Charles "Chucky" O'Brien, Hoffa's foster son and a Teamster's driver, drove a maroon Mercury Marquis that day, matching witness descriptions, but swore he was delivering fish to a friend's restaurant. Per 1976 FBI interview, his eyes avoiding the agents, his hands fidgeting, his voice unsteady. The FBI hauled in a rogues gallery Russell Bufalino, Pennsylvania's quiet kingpin, with a stare like death, Salvatore "Sally Bugs" Bergoglio, a Genovese hitman with a trail of bodies, Vito Giacalone, Tony Jack's brother, even Sano Trafficani, Miami's mob lord whose reach stretched to Havana. Every interview hit a steel wall, a fortress of silence. "I don't know nothing about Hoffa, and I don't want to know." Tony Pro smirked to agents, per a 1975 FBI transcript, his voice dripping with contempt, his eyes cold as ice, daring them to push harder. The Mafia's omerta, the code of silence, was impenetrable, a vow stronger than any subpoena, any threat of prison. Witnesses clammed up, alibis held, evidence vanished like smoke in the wind. A 1976 search of O'Brien's Mercury found traces of blood and hair in the trunk, faint but chilling, but without DNA testing, decades away. It was deemed inconclusive, per a 1977 FBI lab report. Searches of Michigan landfills, Ohio rivers, New Jersey fields, and Pennsylvania swamps turned up nothing but rumors, dead ends, and occasional rusted car part. Wiretaps caught cryptic boasts. One 1976 tape recorded a Detroit capo chuckling, "Jimmy sleeping with fishes, but don't ask where, 'cause I ain't telling." Per a 1978 FBI file, his laugh sharp as a blade, but it wasn't admissible in court, just another taunt. The investigation drowned in its own chaos, a beast too big to steer. A 1978 FBI memo, declassified in 2005, admitted overlapping jurisdictions between Detroit, New Jersey, Chicago, and Miami field offices, plus uncooperative informants. Crippled progress, with agents tripping over each other's leads. Political shadows loomed larger, darker, more insidious. Hoffa's 1971 pardon by Nixon, linked to Teamsters campaign donations and mob favors in a 1975 Senate report, raised questions of government complicity, a deal too dirty to touch. A 1977 FBI file, released in 2010, reveals probes into Nixon's aides, Charles Colson, John Dean, were discouraged by Justice Department brass, citing sensitive political implications that could destabilize key institutions. The Teamster's economic clout, controlling shipping routes vital to commerce, meant federal pressure to soft-pedal the case, per a 1980 DOJ memo that warned of economic disruption if union secrets were exposed. A 1979 Senate hearing noted Hoffa's knowledge of political favors tied to Vegas casino loans, hinting at a web linking the White House, unions, and organized crime, a web too dangerous to unravel. By 1982, Hoffa was declared legally dead, but the case stayed open, a festering wound that refused to heal, a ghost that haunted every agent who touched it. We know who did it. A retired agent told Time in 1980. But knowing and proving are worlds apart. Why did the FBI, with all its might, fail to crack this case, and what truths were they too afraid, or too compromised, to expose? Jimmy Hoffa's disappearance is a graveyard of theories, each one darker, more brutal, more grotesque than the last, each stitched together from fragments of FBI files, mob confessions, and whispers that echo through the decades like ghosts in a fog. The Mafia's fingerprints are unmistakable, their methods ruthless, but the truth remains a phantom, hidden in ash, concrete, or silence, a secret designed to stay buried. Here are the leading theories, drawn from secret files, informant tales, and the chilling boasts of men who knew too much, each a glimpse into how a titan was erased with precision, leaving no trace for the world to find. The car hit and cremation. The most credible theory, backed by a 1989 FBI informant and detailed in Frank the Irishman Sheeran's 2004 book, I Heard You Paint Houses, claims Hoffa was lured into a maroon Mercury Marquis at the Machu's Red Fox. Charles O'Brien, his foster son and a Teamster's driver, drove him to a Detroit house owned by Tony Giacalone's brother. Per a 1976 FBI report, a nondescript brick home on a quiet street, its blinds drawn tight. There Anthony, Tony Provenzano, and Salvatore Sally Bugs Bergoglio waited, their faces grim, their hands steady. Sheeran, a Teamster's enforcer and Russell Bufalino's trusted hitman, confessed to shooting Hoffa twice in the head, saying, "It was orders from Russell. Jimmy was going to talk to the feds about the pension fund, and we couldn't let that happen." Per a 2003 interview with author Charles Brandt, the body was stuffed in a 55-gallon drum, driven to a mob-controlled incinerator in Hamtramck, Michigan, and burned to ash. Per a 1975 FBI memo that noted unconfirmed reports of activity at the facility that night, the air thick with the smell of burning oil. A 1976 lab report found unidentified organic material in the Mercury's trunk, faint but chilling, but pre-DNA tech couldn't confirm it as Hoffa's. Is this the clean, surgical hit the mob perfected, leaving no body, no proof? Just ashes scattered in the wind. A man reduced to nothing? The Giant Stadium legend, a persistent myth, fueled by a 1989 Genovese soldier's tip, claims Hoffa's body was buried under Giant Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey, during its 1975 construction, a project tied to MobLink contractors who poured concrete by night. He's part of the end zone, 6 feet under, cheering for the Giants. The informant bragged, per a 1990 FBI wiretap, his voice thick with pride, a boast echoed in mob circles for years, passed like a dark trophy among capos. The FBI dismissed it as bravado, and a 2010 ground-penetrating radar scan, reported by ESPN, found nothing but dirt, concrete, and rebar. Yet the story endures, a symbol of the mob's untouchable arrogance, a taunt that they could hide a body under America's nose, beneath a stadium where thousands cheered, oblivious. Could Hoffa really be entombed beneath a football field, a grim monument to the Mafia's power, his bones cheering for eternity? The construction cover-up. A 1975 Detroit police report suggests Hoffa was killed and buried in the foundation of a Teamsters-funded building project, possibly a Detroit skyscraper like a Renaissance Center tower or a warehouse in the suburbs, poor during the city's 1970s construction boom. A 2006 FBI dig at a Milford Township farm, prompted by an informant's claim of a shallow grave near a barn, found only soil, rocks, and rusted farm tools, per a 2006 Detroit Free Press article. A 2022 search under a Jersey City bridge, reported by the New York Times, followed a tip about a mob burial site, but yielded nothing but rebar, mud, and frustration. The ground as silent as the men who dug it. The theory persists, fueled by the mob's history of using construction sites to dispose of bodies, per a 1980 FBI informant who said, "Concrete's the best coffin. Nobody looks twice." Was Hoffa hidden in plain sight, his body sealed in concrete by the empire he helped build, a secret foundation for a city skyline? The acid bath, a grimmer tale, from a 1980 FBI informant, claims Hoffa was dissolved in acid at a mob-owned waste facility in Philadelphia or Detroit, a method as efficient as it was horrifying. No body, no crime. A Philadelphia capo allegedly said, per a 1981 wiretap, describing a process, barrels of sulfuric acid, a few hours, and a drain. That left nothing for cops to find. The method fits the Mafia's playbook for high-profile hits, erasing evidence with chemical precision, but no physical proof supports it. Only whispers in dark corners, only the capo's cold laugh. Did the Mafia vaporize Hoffa so completely that even his remains are a ghost, lost to chemistry and silence? A man erased from the earth itself? Each theory carries weight, but none delivers the body or the proof. The FBI's files, riddled with dead ends and cryptic notes, point to a coordinated hit, a masterpiece of mob efficiency. Yet the mob's silence is a steel trap, snapping shut on every lead, every hope of closure. Which story holds the truth, and why has every search, from stadiums to swamps, from Michigan to New Jersey, come up empty, decade after decade, as if the earth itself conspires to keep Hoffa's fate a secret? The disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa isn't just a mystery. It's a fortress built on fear, power, and a code of silence that's held for half a century. Unbroken even in 2025, its walls as strong as ever. The FBI's Hoffa's investigation, a behemoth of manpower, technology, and resources, ran into barriers no badge could breach. The Mafia's omerta, political entanglements, and a terror so deep it keeps witnesses silent across generations, from the 1970s to today, from Detroit streets to the quiet suburbs where secrets fester. Let's unravel why this case, despite 16,000 interviews, thousands of leads, and decades of effort, remains a black hole where truth goes to die. A puzzle designed to defy solving, a wound that refuses to heal. The Mafia's grip was the first and tallest wall, a shadow that swallowed every lead. Hoffa's likely killers, Tony Provenzano, Salvatore Bergoglio, or their crew, were shielded by the Genovese and Detroit crime families, organizations with tentacles and unions, city halls, police precincts, and beyond. A 1976 FBI memo, declassified in 2005, notes all suspects invoked omerta, refusing to speak even under immunity offers or plea deals, their loyalty to the mob outweighing any promise of freedom, any threat of prison. Informants who hinted at details faced swift consequences. 1. A Teamster's driver who mentioned a drum in a 1977 interview was found dead in a car trunk in 1978, his throat slashed, his eyes wide with terror, per a Detroit News report. The mob doesn't forgive, retired agent told Newsweek in 1995, and Hoffa's name is a death sentence, then and now. Even today, aging mobsters, some in their 80s and 90s, stay mute, their lips sealed by a code older than they are. A 2023 FBI interview with a former Genovese associate ended when he whispered, "I talk, I'm dead, and my family's next." Per leaked transcript, his hands trembling, his eyes darting to the door, as if expecting a shadow to step through. Political interference cast a darker, more insidious shadow, a web of power that strangled the truth. Hoffa's 1971 pardon by Nixon, detailed in a 1975 Senate report, was tied to Teamster's campaign donations, $1.2 million to Nixon's 1972 campaign, per Senate records, and mob-backed deals, suggesting Washington had skin in the game, reasons to avoid digging too deep. A 1977 FBI file, released in 2010, reveals probes into Nixon's aides, Charles Colson, John Dean, were discouraged by Justice Department brass, citing sensitive political implications that could destabilize key institutions. The Teamsters' economic clout, controlling shipping routes vital to commerce, meant federal pressure to soft-pedal the case, per a 1980 DOJ memo that warned of economic disruption if union secrets were exposed. A 1979 Senate hearing noted Hoffa's knowledge of political favors tied to Vegas casino loans and mob deals, hinting a web linking the White House, unions, and organized crime. A web too dangerous to unravel, too explosive to touch. Why risk a scandal that could topple senators, expose presidents, and shake the foundations of power? Witness fear is a living thing, a pulse that hasn't faded, a terror that stalks even now. A 2004 FBI interview with a Detroit union official, who claimed to see Hoffa's body in a drum, was cut short after he received anonymous calls threatening his children, his dog found dead on his porch, per a 2005 report. Recent tips, like a 2021 claim of a burial site under a New Jersey bridge, reported by NBC News, dissolve when sources back out, citing pressure from above. One informant, a former Teamsters driver, told the FBI in 2022, "I'd rather die than name names," per a leaked memo, his voice shaking, his eyes scanning the room. The FBI's searches from a 2006 Michigan farm to a 2022 Jersey City dig reflect relentless effort, but yield nothing, with a 2023 FBI statement admitting no physical evidence recovered after 47 years. The Mafia's shadow and its reach into politics, unions, and even law enforcement keeps the truth locked away. A secret guarded by fear that lingers like a curse, a whisper that silences anyone who dares speak. What power silences witnesses across decades, and what truth is so dangerous it's worth killing to protect, even now, in 2025. 50 years after Jimmy Hoffa vanished, the truth is emerging, not in a flood, but in drips, like blood seeping through cracks in a concrete wall. Each drop a fleeting glimpse of a secret the world may never fully know. Declassified FBI files, mob confessions, and Hollywood's spotlight have peeled back layers, but each revelation is a double-edged sword, offering fragments of answers while deepening the enigma, casting shadows that grow longer with time. The secret of Hoffa's fate isn't just hidden, it's a wound the Mafia, and perhaps the government, still wants closed. A truth that carries a weight too heavy for daylight in 2025, a burden that crushes those who seek it. In 2005, the FBI began releasing Hoffa's files under Freedom of Information Act requests, exposing details buried for decades, each page a window into a world of betrayal. A 1976 report named Tony Provenzano, Tony Giacalone, and Salvatore Bergoglio as primary planners, with Charles O'Brien as the driver who lured Hoffa to his death, but lacked evidence for indictments, the trail cold before it began. A 1989 informant, a Genovese soldier, claimed Hoffa was strangled in a Detroit house and incinerated in a mob-controlled Hamtramck facility, corroborating Frank the Irishman Sheeran's 2004 book, I Heard You Paint Houses. Sheeran, Teamster's hitman and Russell Bufalino's confidant, confessed to shooting Hoffa twice in the head on orders from Bufalino, saying he was going to talk to the feds about the pension fund, spill names, bring us all down. Per a 2003 interview with author Charles Brandt, his voice heavy with regret, his eyes distant. His account, dramatized in Martin Scorsese's The Irishman, 2019, blends fact and fiction but draws on real FBI wiretaps, like a 1976 tape where a Detroit capo said, Jimmy's gone, and the union's ours now. Let it stay that way. Per a 1978 file, his voice low, smug final. A 1977 surveillance photo, declassified in 2010, shows Provenzano and Giacalone meeting in a Jersey diner days before the disappearance, their faces grim, their hands gesturing sharply, as if sealing a pact. New tips keep surfacing, only to dissolve like smoke in the wind. In 2021, a deathbed confession from a New Jersey landfill worker claimed Hoffa's body was moved under a Pulaski Skyway bridge, a steel skeleton looming over the Meadowlands, prompting a 2022 FBI dig, reported by the New York Times, that found nothing but dirt, rebar, and rusted pipes. The ground as silent as the men who buried the truth. A 2023 book, The Hoffa Files, by journalist Dan Moldia, cites a 2019 interview with a retired Philadelphia capo who said Hoffa was taken out to stop his Senate testimony on mob pension loans. He knew too much, and he was too loud. Nobody wanted him back. The capo whispered, per Moldia's notes, his eyes darting nervously, his voice barely audible, as if the walls themselves were listening. The FBI's 2023 press release mentions ongoing DNA analysis with new forensic tech, testing fibers, soil samples, and even rust from past digs, but no breakthroughs have emerged, and agents remain tight-lipped, citing active leads that cannot be disclosed. Their words vague, their hope fading. The cultural obsession fuels progress, keeping the pressure on, refusing to let Hoffa fade. The Irishman, podcasts like Crime Junkie and Morbid, and Reddit's or /Unresolved Mysteries have made Hoffa a household name again, with threads dissecting every file, every confession, every grainy photo. A 2020 Detroit Free Press article quoted a former Teamsters official. Hoffa's a ghost that haunts Detroit. Nobody talks, but everybody knows something, and they're scared to say it, even now. Yet fear stifles truth, a chokehold that hasn't loosened. A 2023 FBI interview with a surviving Giacalone associate ended when he said, I talk, I'm dead, and my family's next. Per a leaked memo, his voice barely above a whisper, his hands clenched, his face pale. A 2022 tip from a Detroit bartender, claiming his father saw a drum loaded into a truck in 1975, led to a brief FBI probe, but the source recanted after visits from unknown men, per a 2023 NBC report, his voice trembling as he begged to be left alone. The files and confessions inch us closer, but the Mafia's reach into unions, politics, even memory, keeps the truth at bay. A secret guarded by a fear that hasn't faded, a shadow that grows darker with time. Why does Hoffa's name still spark dread? And what secrets are too toxic to unearth, even after half a century? Some men disappear because they want to be forgotten, to slip into the shadows and fade from memory. Jimmy Hoffa disappeared because too many people needed him to be silent, permanently, irrevocably, erased from the world. For nearly 50 years, his name has echoed through America's underbelly, a whisper in union halls, a curse in mob dens, a question mark in FBI files that grows heavier with each passing year, each fruitless search, each unanswered plea. A titan who commanded millions, who brokered deals with gangsters and defied presidents, vanished in a Michigan parking lot on July 30th, 1975, leaving nothing but a green Pontiac, a payphone's fading echo, and a legacy of fear that lingers in 2025, as potent now as it was then. The secret police files, declassified memos, wiretaps, confessions, point to a Mafia hit, a surgical execution by men like Tony Provenzano, Salvatore Bergoglio, or Frank Sheeran, their silence sealed by omerta, the blood oath that binds the mob tighter than any law, stronger than any prison sentence, more enduring than time itself. But those files also hint at a deeper, darker conspiracy. Nixon's pardon, Teamster's campaign cash, a government that turned a blind eye to protect its own secrets, a system where power buys silence, where loyalty is a weapon sharper than any knife, deadlier than any bullet, and truth is a liability too costly to bear. Hoffa's story is more than a mystery. It's a mirror, reflecting a world where the lines between crime, politics, and justice blur into shadow, where truth is a commodity traded in backrooms, buried in ash, or dissolved in acid. The FBI searches landfills, farms, bridges from 1975 to 2023. Find nothing, not because there's nothing to find, but because someone, somewhere, made sure it stays hidden, whether in a drum of ashes, a slab of concrete, or a vat of chemicals. The mob doesn't forget, a retired agent told CNN in 2022, and neither does Washington. Some secrets are worth more than a body, worth more than justice. Was Hoffa killed to stop his comeback, to silence his threats, to expose mob corruption in the Teamsters pension fund, to bury secrets of million-dollar loans that built Vegas empires and fueled political campaigns? Or was it bigger, a warning to anyone who dared cross the invisible line connecting unions, organized crime, and the highest offices in the land, a message etched in blood, sealed in silence, delivered with the precision of a guillotine? The whispers persist in declassified files, in the fading memories of aging mobsters, in the Reddit threads, podcasts, and documentaries that keep Hoffa's name alive, a ghost that haunts America's conscience, a name that refuses to die. But as long as the Mafia's code of silence holds, as long as fear outweighs truth, the answers may stay buried forever, in a drum, a field, or a shadow that refuses to speak. Jimmy Hoffa was a giant, but even giants can be erased when the stakes are high enough, when the secrets are too dangerous to tell, when the power to silence is absolute. What do you believe happened to him? Was it a mob hit to protect their empire, a clean execution to silence a loudmouth who knew too much? Or was it a conspiracy that reaches deeper, into the halls of power where silence is currency, where truth is a liability, and where man's life is just a price to pay? Drop your thoughts below. Share this to keep Hoffa's story alive, and join us next time as we chase another mystery that refuses to rest, another truth too deadly to uncover, another name that demands to be remembered.